Hey, what's up? This is 36 Drew coming to you, N3O Clan representing. Happy to be back in the business of VODs, back on my feet, so to say, even though you play this game sitting. In fact, I played this game sitting on a stool, on a chair without a back. So try and beat that. What we have here is 2v2. Of course, from my perspective, I will be playing as Spain. My partner will be playing as Japan. So it'll be Spain and Japan versus Spain and Iroquois. This is a interesting matchup. We are playing against Mijobe, perhaps pronounced Mijobe, and Victor Sui. Both players are Swedish as far as I know, and members of ROM, the clan led by Chalet. Which seems to be a pretty popular clan with a number of skilled members and so on and so on. Very active on ESO, easy to get games with, and so forth. The strategy we're planning to use in this game is to go for Rodeleros combined with Yummy Archers. My mate says he's very good at Yummy Archer spam. I have to take his word for it and assume that he is. And the plan is to basically use Rodeleros as a meat shield. One of the things I experiment within this game early in the game is how do Rodeleros work with cover mode as a meat shield? And the answer is so-so. They actually still move kind of fast, faster than a pikeman in cover mode, but it's just not the same as pikes in cover mode. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. Pikes in cover mode form a nice circle. They just seem to do their job. And Rodeleros, they just seem to be better when you take advantage of their speed and so on. It's interesting when you get into scenarios where you have things like Rodeleros versus War Dogs or Musketeers, or even things like Rodeleros versus Buck the Tame Wolf, who makes an appearance in this matchup. Also right here, I have my hotkeys programmed actually so that the letter E puts me into melee mode. One of the things that is rather bothersome as Spain is that also queues up a War Dog. I don't play a lot of Spain, I just play a little bit of Spain. They're really quite a fun civ to play, and even more and more competitive in 1.1. They can hold their own in a lot of matches, even though there still are some that are difficult. Like, for example, I still feel Spain versus Britain. Britain is just like basically a better version of Spain. Better muskets, better hussars, villagers that just seem to keep coming like crazy. Though I must admit, the Spain, when you send 5+4 and you age with 5, your economy it's good, it's reasonable, and you have quicker shipments to aid that. The match is still pretty close in terms of balance, and Japan is arguably pretty strong in the current state of affairs. But if you want to really talk about balance and you take it a step further, with the current fan patch 1.1, the state of affairs for balance is just fantastic. Really, I've said this once, I'll say it again, almost every civ has a chance in every match. There's very few matches that are straight. In fact, I would argue that there are no impossible matches, whereas before I would have said something along the lines of if you take it back 2 patches, playing against Japan and India was almost impossible, and some playing ports last patch in some matches it felt impossible, blah 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 blah. So of course, now with free hunting dogs and changes to when certain military upgrade cards are available and being able to age up with 13 villagers, there's a lot of options there too. Some would argue that they're lame. It's tough to say. Not really sure. Ports have not really been called lame for many reasons. I would say primarily really just their 20 range goons have been considered lame. But even then it was hard to call them lame in the last patch because it took a long time to get to 20 range goons. And that was more of an issue for like 3v3 random games. So anyway, getting back on track with this game, you'll notice there's a bit of an exchange between our explorers early. The Iroquois explorer, of course, received a small nerf, but the HP bonus he provides, his crack shot, and so on, really are useful and instrumental in the game. You really want to kill him. Same with the Spain explorer, actually, and I was really disappointed to lose mine there. Don't think I was paying close enough attention. I think I could have saved him, or had him in a better location. But I do ask my mate to go and save him, and he does. So during the transition, I'm going to gather 300 wood, 100 of which will be used for a house, and 200 of which will be used for a barracks. We're going to go defensive FB, of course, because the Iroquois travois. will likely be placed, somewhat forward, and it's just playing against TWC civs. It just always seems, like you want to go for more of a defensive FB. I guess it depends who you are yourself. If you're Russia putting up an early blockos or something, it doesn't matter so much. But I just always feel the defensive FB is good. First card is actually 6 Rodeleros, followed by 700 wood. I do have 3 villagers on wood just long enough so that I can get another house. So my pop space will be 40. And there we scout an early barracks from Mijobe or Mijobe or whatever you call him. I'm going to call him M from now on. So there's M's early barracks. So you know what? We should even give him a girly nickname, like how we call Chalet instead of Emil. We call him Emily. Let's call him Melissa. So Mijobe, your name's now Melissa. So we're harassing Melissa's front base and early on with explorers and such. And there come the early Rodeleros. Notice all the war dogs, and look at Buck the Tame Wolf shows up. Massive amounts of them. In fact, they've obviously, the Iroquois player Victor Sui has sent the Iroquois Explorer card and has effectively massed wolves. I don't know, I saw something about a joke about a wolf FF on Age Sanctuary. I didn't really take the time to read the thread, so I'm not sure if it was a joke or if it was serious, but I must say the idea of a wolf FF is wildly hilarious. These players don't know that I have a big vendetta versus Buck the Tame Wolf. There's a long story where Buck the Tame Wolf essentially took out my 2 Falk shipment and caused me to lose a very important matchup. So I'm not too happy about that. And you can see that the Yummy are just essentially staying back, and I just have my Rodeleros at the front. They don't really particularly counter any of these units strongly. The one nice thing is they do have the 40% melee resistance, which will come in handy, which is greater than that of a musket. And of course they will be fighting in melee most of the time and hopefully not running back and forth too much, staying in ranged mode. Meanwhile, with the 700 wood, I'm going to get up a market and start to grab some market upgrades. They're of course essential, as are the 5+4 villager cards as Spain. You could maybe make the case that 4 isn't as important. 5 without question is important. All civs that have 5 villagers always have them in every deck. Even civs that also have the 4 villager card usually include them in their deck too. And I'm just trying to manage my economy at this point so that basically it's all food and gold and no one on wood. I just want to get by on the wood that I ship at this point in the game. I want to use it to grab my market upgrades, hunting dogs, steel traps, placer mines, and eventually the larger gold mine upgrade. I can't remember what it's called offhand. So here we're kind of creeping up to their front base, and I do have my explorer. My control groups, I guess I'll explain a little bit. They're really basic in this game. I have Rodeleros in control 2, and then as I get closer and I approach units, I basically click and drag smaller groups, and then I use the attack move from there. So if I had 10 Rodeleros, I might try and click and drag 5, press attack move, repeat and repeat. And, it depends. I'm trying to, go for the meat shield, and here I'm experimenting with cover mode, and that doesn't seem to be working so well. And, I also realize that war dogs can be quite advantageous as Spain, so I'm also going to experiment with those units as well. And of course, Spain, aka Melissa, has decided to go for muskets here, which essentially Victor Sui is going for as well. And here we're just experiencing a bit of lag in the game. You gotta love it when lovely lag happens. This map has been redesigned for Fan Patch 1.1, as far as I understand it, and has been redesigned very well. The hunts are now very much balanced, and it's quite interesting starting with like 6k food, worth of, what do you call them? Not llamas, whatever kind of deer those are. Interesting starting with 6k food worth of them in your town center. And of course, you do want to be herding it back as much as possible and getting on your opponent's hunts. One of the nice things about massing Rodeleros is your opponent may tend to get away from Cav. Can you blame them? Rodeleros are very good versus Cav. They're still a slightly underpowered unit in my opinion, but that's just kind of the way things go. And here, again, I'm just trying to use these guys as a meat shield, while the Yummy just basically sit back and fire. Very similar to longbows. You know, in a lot of situations, your cav, your heavy infantry, your muskets, your pikes, they just want to sit back and be used as a meat shield. And there I go to Ransom, my explorer, because I want him to get to the front and to be able to spam war dogs, especially once my economy starts to get rolling. And of course, I have all the upgrades for Rodeleros, as well as Hussars/Lancers in the deck. It's just the way my team decks are set up. If I was going for more semi-FF or, you know, whatever kind of style, I would have a deck more geared towards that. So, but in this case, it was pre-planned that wasn't what we were going to do. We were going to have more of a colonial agenda, spend time hanging out, massing Rodeleros and Yummy. And, you know, but it is, in my opinion, a good idea to have a strategy before you go into the game. But you also really need to be able to adapt on that strategy quickly. One of the things I've found is that sometimes I get really fixed on a strategy. Like I was trying to play France 1v1 recently, and I wanted to basically copy Chalet's VOD where he does the, as somebody called it, 45 Hussar semi-FF. It felt like he made 45, even though he still managed to hit Fortress at about 12 or 13 minutes. And, you know, you get so fixated on it, yet when the opponent counters it reasonably well, it's kind of like, you got to adapt. And, you know, in many ways, I feel that rather than clicking speed and micro and knowing when to attack, separates, you know, the major generals from, you know, the lieutenant colonels and stuff. It really is quite a difference. And there, Victor Sui has a 4 Kanya shipment come out. Just want to keep my Rodeleros on them. Want to keep those Yummies sitting back and firing. And there I go to send the second upgrade for my Rodeleros. I started to talk about hotkeys, actually. Control 1 is my Explorer. Control 2 is my Rodeleros. Control 6 is my Town Center. Control 5 is my Barracks. And that is all the hotkeys I will end up using in this situation. And there I have some War Dogs queued up. War Dogs seem to do very well against muskets, in my opinion. I don't know what it is and why they do. I don't know if it's that they're cost effective or that you can just spam them kind of anywhere or that they cause them to slow down. But in a lot of scenarios, they just seem to be really effective. I can recall watching old Spanish replays on New England. I can't remember who it was. And like the early game War Dogs were just crucial and instrumental in what was happening in the game. And I'm going to apologize now if there's brief flashes of black in the game in between the video clips that Fraps splices up. I'm not exactly sure if you'll be able to see it, but I can see it on mine just every once in a while, but it doesn't seem to be a problem. So here we've effectively pushed them back a little bit. Cumulatively speaking, if you added up the scores and you divided them by 2 at this point, it would be about 80 to 75. So we'd have a slight advantage, not a lot, but an advantage nonetheless. And when you're playing against very skilled players such as these, you do feel very good about having an advantage. However, if memory and experience has taught me anything, it's that they can probably hold you off better than you can hold them off. So when you start pushing, you got to push hard and you got to push good, and they'll hang around in the game longer because they have a pretty good chance of piecing it back together, even though right now the game is basically still even, though perhaps we've gained some map control back. And of course I'm continuing to add upgrades. Right now I have 40 villagers when I send Economy Theory. There's a lot of different times when you could send it. Spain doesn't really have strict build orders in my opinion, not like other civs. I don't know if it's just because Spain isn't a top tier civ. I just don't know. But, and oh, there we scout the war hut of Victor Sui going up again, along with a stables again from Mijobe. And we're kind of questioning why he's going for a stables again, and in my head I'm thinking he's got to be going to Fortress real soon. And there we notice villagers running back, and we're keeping him running around off the resources. Always a good thing. And there some shinobi show up, which I believe that's what they're called. Anyway, they have 23 siege and colonial for an archer, which is just phenomenal. Meanwhile, I'm trying to always be bringing in more hunts, because of course gathering food with the 2 upgrades is just phenomenal. And you'll notice that even though the game has gone on a while, my partner, whose name is Cammel, by the way, sometimes we joke around and call him Camel Toe. Hopefully that's not too inappropriate for anyone sitting around. Sorry, parents, if you're sitting around beside your child and that offended you. He's doing a pretty good job of massing yummies, and then of course he switched a little bit to ashies and got up the consulate and shipped in the shinobis. So we're going to head over to Melissa's base, and we are going to, well, look, he just aged, so we want to get over there. We are expecting Lancer shipments, possibly 2 Falcons, you just don't know. Although I have to question a little bit of going Lancers when there's so many rods. I've got a good 25 rods and war dogs and stuff like that, but you know what? He is a much better player than me, so I'm not going to be one to sit and question his strategy. So, kind of debating what to do here. Run in. Do I start to siege houses? Town center, do I want to siege? There's a stables up. If you can house a player, that's good. The one thing is, when you lose your army early, it's quite possible that you have the pop space to, sustain more army. So, you may end up having to siege a lot of houses before you actually affect them, and that could be time to get out batches of various military units, get shipments in, time for Victor Sui to run over, and so on and so on. So we do decide to creep in on that stables and siege it. The next card I send is Team Inquisition, which is +10 to line of sight for the team. I just love that card. I just think it's so I just love being able to see what's going on between all the units. The only thing about it, it's not great compared to some other cards. Like, of course, 5 villagers is a trillion times better. There I go to put up a second barracks, because my economy with now like 45 villagers is definitely quite easily can spam Rodelleros from 2 barracks. And here I'm trying to drag and select smaller groups of Rodelleros using attack move. Click and drag is select about 8, 10, 12, whatever it is. Also queuing up some more dogs for my explorer to join just basically the big fight here. To which I'm thinking that this is probably going to be a pretty positive outcome for us at this point in the game. Meanwhile, there are some other units. Ain is creeping in from behind, and I'm just trying to keep the spam going, trying to keep the economy going, and try to not end up with an excess of one particular resource that's quite large. I know when I watch replays of guys like Dammit or Orc or any of those really good players, that they tend to be able to manage their resources very well and not having an excess. And there are a bunch of villagers pop out and they start building a wall, and I'm on Ventrilo in this with my opponent, and he's right on the ball. He says 2 Falcon shipments coming out right there. And we just run in and get to it. Had we been looking elsewhere, that wall got up nearly instantly. It could have been a very different outcome, but instead we're basically in melee mode, even though he's got archers. But who cares when you're in melee mode versus a 2 Falcon shipment and Rodelleros galore coming in. I start to send the Archaic Infantry card because it's nice to have yummies that train 50% quicker, and at this point in Colonial, there's not a lot of other cards that would really be particularly useful to me. So, meanwhile, of course, I'm still on Ventrilo talking with my partner. And the reason I put up a church there, this is just me. At this point in the game, I just, like the same reason I like that card. I love to have a line of sight. I love to know what's going on. I love to get those 2 upgrades. It costs 300 food total. And you get, additional line of sight for buildings as well as your units. So if there's raids coming in, whatever it is, it's just, I just personally love to do it. Whether or not it's really all that effective, I don't know. At this stage of the game, later in the game, sure, but I don't know. Anyway, so here, just trying to continue to get into melee with those units. There I realize that there's a bunch of Lancers. I have to come back and make sure that all is not lost in this situation. Meanwhile, Melissa's continuing to do an amazing job of spamming war dogs. That explorer just doesn't seem to die, and I don't know if I'm not paying attention or if he's paying me gold to ransom him and keep getting him back. I really am not all that sure, but it seems to be working for him nonetheless. And this is just an accidental pause right there of no significance. So anyway, continuing to spam Rodelleros, and I noticed that I end up with 1k wood, which I do not need, so I'm going to start to try to readjust my economy to reflect my gold and food needs. I do place up a lot of towers in this game. Every time I go and I grab one of those big, massive hunts, I generally put up a tower. I've been trying to get in the habit of doing it, especially when you have the wood available, especially when there's lancers floating around, especially when you're sending out 10, 12 villagers basically unprotected, and something like losing 10 or 12 villagers could be influential enough to lose the game. So right here we have a critical decision. Are we going to stay in colonial, try to push? Are we going to try to age? What are we going to try to do? And I decide at this point that I'm going to make the decision, and I'm going to start to gather the resources that I need to age right away. Meanwhile, there's a forward barracks being built by Cammel, aka Cammel, so that he can spam quicker from the front lines. A little later in the game, I'm going to join him with forward barracks as well. The ability to, in fact, I'm going to do it right there. The ability to have units that are replacement units come to the front line very quickly is really crucial in game. And I'm going to ignore that phone call for now. And of course, also can be sometimes annoying when you go to gather and a Japanese player has shrines on your hunts. But I got to give credit to him because he did ask first whether or not he could take them, and whether or not that would really be detrimental to me. In this case, there was enough food hanging around elsewhere that it was just fine to do. So notice here that they're trying to reestablish some map control, and there of course I go to put up a tower also. Age up with the 5 villager politician. In my opinion, if you've hung out in colonial for any length of time, which I have for 20 minutes now, you definitely got to be aging up with the 5 villager politician. 4 hussars, or 8 pikes, or 4 pikes and 4 expos, or whatever it is just simply not going to cut it. So I'm on my way up and about halfway onto fortress, and they've committed to this fight. It's just you can't pull back at this point. The Ashies are also, he switched from Yummy to Ashy for the moment, just doing a tremendous job at supporting against those lancers. Lancers versus rods is kind of weird. Lancers, of course, with the 4 times bonus will do 80 damage. I'm not sure if he had it shipped or not, to Rodeleros and kill them in 3 hits. Meanwhile, Rodeleros will kill Lancers, I think, in about 4 or 5 hits, something like that. I'm not exactly sure. In fact, it's probably a lot more than that. But nonetheless, the game keeps going, and we're going to keep playing. I'm going to ransom my Explorer. I'm going to go for second town center upon aging. I really like it when I have a good enough economy rolling, when I've got a military situation where I've got a good spam going and I can then get up a second and even a third town center. And of course I want to go upgrade my Rodeleros right away, and also send the Rodelero HP attack. I guess it would be Rodelero combat, or perhaps pikeman combat, whatever it is that they call it. So one of the things about veteran units that I found is, it's funny, I played a game earlier and had my opponent sat back for maybe 20 or 30 more seconds, I would have won. It was a 1v1 on Patagonia, and I had a bunch of Janissaries and Hussars and Avis guns against, it was Portuguese muskets and Hussars essentially. But he just aged slightly before me, got the veteran upgrades, and I was just about to start getting all the veteran upgrades, and it would have been an even battle, but because the veteran status is so powerful, it simply wasn't, and I lost the game because of that. So you never ever, in my opinion, want to be sitting in age 3 and without your veteran upgrades. Even with a handful of units, they just seem so critical for successful outcomes in the game. And here Melissa's able to mass a whole bunch of Falcons, and I'm thinking that my Rodeleros are going to be able to get in here and melee these units, and they are. That's one of the things about these one-pop units like Rodeleros and Coyotes. Pathing is just awesome for things like this, and this is really going to hurt quite a bit to lose those Falcons, and you're getting pretty close to GG here. You get a sense of when there's just been enough pressure on, and when your opponent just is unable to sustain their spam, and there he goes to call Minutemen indicating generally at this point in the game that the pressure is quite a bit, and you're making a last-ditch effort, a last stand to possibly win the game. And there, Melissa decides to resign. It's GG. It was a great game to play. It was a fun strategy to try out. You know, Spain isn't necessarily a top-tier civ, which of course balances out on the mirror, and then you have Iroquois versus Japan. So it was very, very nice to play with the players from ROM. Have enjoyed playing with their clan very much so. Just take a look around the map there. You see the little wall that attempted to get up for the 2 Falcon shipment. And it's interesting how critical timing can be, because, you know, if that had gotten up, it could have had a very different outcome. There we take a look at villager production, and you see 5+4 came in pretty quick for Spain. And taking a look at military graphs, you'll see the team stats. Our mass was pretty good, and I have to give a lot of thanks to Cammel for being able to mass his yummies and ashies and everything so well. You can see when you get all the market upgrades how well your economy can roll with Spain. This is with a Japanese player, another Spain player, and an Iroquois player. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch this VOD. I welcome your input very much so. I hope you guys have a great day, and take care. Yes, I did.